Sorry about that, Sharon. All right, and there we go. So just a little bit about ETS. Our mission here of our almost 77-year-old organization is to advance quality and equity in education by providing fair and valid assessments along with research and related services. So we serve the teaching and educator community. We develop, we administer, um, and do scoring of fair and valid and reliable assessments. We conduct and disseminate groundbreaking research. Many people don't know ETS is not just a testing organization. We are actually a worldwide leader in research. And we do have many, many federal grants working with the government and Department of Education. Some of you may or may not know, we are responsible for reporting NAEP. We do that work for the federal government. Let's jump in and talk a little bit about praxis resources for ed prep programs such as yourself. So some of our resources, we have study companions, curriculum crosswalks, and our education data manager. Those are some of the three areas that we're going to go over today. So our study companions are published both for test takers and for EPPs alike. The study companion is actually our test blueprint, or our test at a glance, as we call it. It has content topics with discussion questions. So I do recommend that whether you're a professor or a leader in your institution, or you're asking your candidates to look at these, you really should check this out. It is a great, great tool. We do have sample questions and answers, along with rationales for those answers. And then we give general information and study tips to those candidates. It's really a powerful tool. Around the third page or so is the page that's displayed here on my presentation. I did use just elementary ed math just as an example today, but you can see by the pie chart and the content next to it, it gives you the approximate number of questions in each subcategory and the approximate percentage of that subtest. So it's kind of powerful because you know what the test is leaning towards, and it tells you basically what you're going to see within the document of the sub-content areas that it's going to reference. Another thing that we utilize at ETS is our curriculum crosswalks. Our curriculum crosswalks are designed for EPPs and candidates, if they choose, to take the specific crosswalk document that is listed for the specific assessment that you're about to take or about to prepare for. We encourage individuals to crosswalk the course where the information to the left column is presented. So what you're doing is you're trying to ensure, whether it's at the EPP level or again the test taker or candidate level, you want to ensure that the content that's being measured within the praxis assessment was addressed within your preparation. Obviously, while it is powerful for candidates to do this, it gives them a reference point to go back and study. It's really powerful for EPPs because as you're going through coursework, you can let your candidates know that this is specific information or specific areas that are going to be tested towards. The curriculum crosswalks can be located on our ETS site. I'll get through that in a little bit and show you where all that is. Okay, so if you're on our Praxis site, which is praxis.ets.org, you'll see at the top there's a header bar. You would click on Learn More, Educator Prep Programs, and then it would come down and take you to your supporting teacher candidates and curriculum crosswalks. Basically, if you get anywhere on our site and you get somewhere to educator preparation programs, that's where you're going to find all the resources listed for EPPs. Let's take a little time and walk through our data manager. Now, I will say these are going to be static slides that I'll be presenting from today. We do not display live data generally in a conference type setting. If we were meeting with your EPP one-on-one and having a data discussion or showing very specific things around EDM, we'd be happy to share your data at that time. But again, these are static slides for the purpose of the presentation. So let's talk about EDM in general. So if you go to the same section of Learn More at the top of our ETS website, you're going to click over to ETS Data Manager and go to ETS Client Services at the bottom. There's also a QR code here, which I can leave up for just a moment if anybody wants to grab that. Those of you at an institution, I do hope that you're already familiar with logging into ETS Data Manager, and hope that this information may just be a refresher for you. Or if you learn a little more today, that's wonderful. And there will be an opportunity at the end when I provide Lisa's contact information. If any of you want to schedule a deep dive with her, she is more than happy to do that for either just you as an individual or your institution as a whole. So our data manager system does a few things. We do quick and custom analytic reports. Those are aggregated reports for institutions, state agencies, and it also shows national trend data around a specific assessment. You will be able to see test taker score reports for test takers that have designated your EPP as a score recipient. So I'll stop there for just 1 second. We do want to make sure for EPPs, when you're having individuals taking assessments, you do want to make sure that they have your score reporting number for your institution and that they do select you during their registration process, as they do receive up to 4 free score reports at that time. If they have to go back later and send a score to an institution, it is a $50 fee to do so. So we do recommend that the candidates do this through the registration process. The state of Tennessee is not one of the 4. They are an automatic test recipient, so that still leaves the candidate 4 in total. There's also the availability for your institution to do test taker score reports via our web services function. So working with your IT team at your institution, these scores could go into a database at the EPP where you wouldn't even have to physically go in and pull score reports. And again, if that's something you would like to pursue, if you're not currently doing that, please contact Lisa and she'll be more than happy to work with folks and get that set up for you. The other thing you have is your roster of attending students. We do allow institutions to verify their roster. You can delete candidates who designated your institution maybe inappropriately, or maybe you were their baccalaureate level institution and now they're going, let's say, for speech and language pathology at a health sciences college at another institution, when they may have or should have identified that institution moving forward in this for score reporting. So you do have that availability to delete candidates that are irrelevant to your institution. So on your dashboard for EDM, we do have a snapshot of test takers by program that we could do. You have a Department of Education snapshot of the pipeline. On the test taker score reports, you can monitor students so you can see their actual score reports. The Department of Ed can respond to applicant inquiries. So they use score reports to verify for licensure and verify if applicants' score reports are received, or if it was a pass or fail scenario, they can go in and do that on the licensing side. Sorry, it's just admitting someone. And the EPPs and the DOE alike can automatically download the data, as I said before. We do offer quick reports. So EPPs in the Department of Ed, you can routinely track performance, pass rates, and category results based off of your candidates. The state can do it either by your EPP or they can do it for the state as a whole. You can also easily use data to respond to ad hoc questions. So if you're looking at some type of program approval, something of that nature, or how are candidates performing in X domain, you'd be able to go through and do a historical report to see how your candidates are performing against the preparation. Quick reports are also good for facilitating state and federal reporting requirements. So there's a lot of data contained within our quick reports, and I do encourage you to check that out. And again, if anyone needs a one-on-one or an institutional-based training, Lisa Cologne Durham would be happy to schedule that with you and do that. Let's talk a little bit about custom reports. These are a little more detailed. So both the EPP and the Department of Ed are able to conduct more complex analysis to answer more complex questions. So it's the deeper dive, if you will, from our quick reports. Reports are easily customized to support reporting to various groups of stakeholders. So you can do Excel downloads, you can put it into pivot tables. There's different things you can do with the data so that it can be displayed a little differently depending upon your audience. So when you're in Education Data Manager, let's take a look at your test taker score reports. This is a sample score report. Again, I don't display live data during a presentation. What you'll have here is your overall score report. I have one for core academic skills. So you'll see here that this individual has a 176 for reading, and for math, they have a 152. It gives you that information on the sliding scale. And you'll look 152 here to 182 is where they need to be in that range. If you look over, you can actually go in, you can double click down in the score report, and you could see the actual test categories. So you can see the average performance range, and you can see where your candidate fell within that range. So it kind of gives you a good insight whether or not the individual is just meeting that range, if they're very high in that range. And as an institution, if you have a lot of candidates in a specific sub area that are just barely meeting that range, might be good to look at what's being taught in the curriculum with those candidates, see if there's a refresh or see if there's something that you could do additional to maybe support those candidates a little bit in that journey for that sub area. Now we're going to look at quick reports. So you can view all test takers, the state agency and institutions. You can do your attending institution, which is your AI, or your designated institution, which is your DI. You'll receive category performance. You could look at pass rates, whether it be the highest score that a collective group obtained, or you could look at all scores. You can do a 1-year and a 5-year pass rate performance, and you can do an AI institutional summary report. So this is just a quick screenshot looking at quick reports. You'd come into the menu, you'd select the type of report you're looking for, and then you would complete the sheet. Let's kind of look here at state or agency statistics. So on this specific assessment, which is your middle school reading and language arts subs test, you're going to see here that you had 491 on the top line that actually passed out of 622 assessments with 541 unique individuals. So there's some retests in here. The overall passing score is 90.76. So this is really powerful data for an institution because you can see how you're performing. That was at the state level. Now let's look at your institution. Obviously, again, this is not real data for your institutions in Tennessee. But here you've got the same thing. You've got 42 exams taken by 37 individual or unique test takers. And on this specific exam on the top line, you have a 75.68% passing rate. So as you're looking at this as an institution, obviously you would want to drill down into that data to look at that passage rate and see what subcategories or areas you could boost performance by your candidates. Then we're going to look at all test takers. So all test takers would be national data. So on the same middle school mathematics subtest, during the September 22nd through August 23rd, testing year, you would see here that you had almost 19,000 test takers in that respective period nationwide. You will see that the midpoint, which is the cut score that would be adopted by Tennessee for this conversation, the average pass rate across the nation for that assessment with the applied cut score, you're talking 74.86 pass rate. So it's also good for the institution and the state to look at their respective pass rates and compare it to the national rate. Sometimes institutions are doing very, very well, but they don't give themselves enough credit because they think they want their pass rates higher. But depending upon the complexity of the assessment, when you look at the national data, you may be trending far higher than the national rate or far lower. So it is something you definitely want to look at. And let's look at your state rates. So in this scenario, you had 395 total test takers. The state as a whole, with the adopted cut score, passed at 83.80. So Tennessee as a whole, looking at all test takers in that specific assessment, was at a little over 83, almost 84%. So the institution we referenced prior was less than the state rate. So that institution would want to do a little bit of a deep dive. There's more about institution. Let's get into category scores. So on your category scores on the same subtest, you're looking at average of percent correct. So at the national level, about 59.5%. At the state level, it's about 63. And at the institution level, for the purposes of this discussion today, it's about 69.5. So this is a really good quick eye shot because you can see in your data here that this institution did better than the state and better than the national. So there are some good reportings in this database that can actually give you these quick snapshots of data to tell you whether or not you should drill down a little further. Now, when you're running your 1-year pass rate, you also have the availability to look at your total test takers. You could sort it by ethnicity, gender. There's a lot you can do here. There's a huge menu of options. You can look at the highest education level that that individual has reported. And when I say has reported, I do want everyone to keep in mind some of this data is self-reported by your candidates. So we do not have the ability to verify if an individual actually completed their baccalaureate degree at X institution, but they are listing that within here. Okay, so keep that in mind. But there is some very powerful data here. Let's talk about your projects. When you're doing custom reports, it allows you to design the report within the data parameters that are available to your institution. It allows you to look at the full picture for the quantity or number of your test takers, keeping in mind that the N size for test takers, if it's under 5, they're not reported. It would just display as an asterisk. So here's just a couple quick steps. As you're going through custom reports, you're going to name your project. So this might be a project that you want to run over and over and over again. So you're going to build this query and maybe just each year go into it and change your academic year to get fresh data. Or it could just be a project that you're running for a specific data set or presentation that you're doing, or just digging deeper for your candidates. That's up to you. You could delete projects, keep projects. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that. But you would give it a project name. You would start by selecting the criteria. You would go into your administration dates. And then from there, you would select your type of report, meaning score. Do you want highest scores? Do you want first score? And then you can go into different statistics. You can look at your median, your mean, um, your percentiles. There's a lot of data that you can pull out of custom reports. Now, I would say custom reports are an art. It does take time to learn the custom reports. It does take time to navigate that data. And again, if your EPP or whether it's individual or as a group needs some assistance with that, we are more than happy to provide that to you. So once you've completed a project and you've submitted that project through Data Manager, it's going to come back with data from that project. It'll go into an upload mode, it'll start running its data, and it will notify you when that data is complete. So what you see here is we just ran some data around the national core analysis for first attempt and highest score. So you see that's two different reports that we did. It does give you the option to view the data live, copy the data, or delete the report. So that's kind of a larger overview, if you will, of Data Manager. Now I'm going to get into a little bit about some of the other utilization here. So some ideas for your consideration. You know, it helps to identify content areas for your highest passing rate, identify content areas for your lowest passing rate. You could also do your median there. Use curriculum crosswalks to ensure coverage of content, right? Like we talked about for your candidates. And how you can use the curriculum crosswalks, pass rates, and category scores to identify gaps, like we talked about. There are some institutions that do find large gaps in their programs. I would say those tend to probably be smaller institutions that don't have enough resource or as many resources available to maybe maintain some of their course curriculum, right? But it does happen, unfortunately. But many institutions are pretty spot on with identifying the content that needs to be taught to their candidates, aligning it with the standards in their state. And test takers usually do fairly well when they're receiving good quality work, right? And they're prepped for their test. So a little bit about an ETS update here. Several months ago, we came out with a newsletter called the Praxis Beacon. They do come out at least monthly. Sometimes they come out twice a month if there's some, great information that we need to share with the field. Here's a few of the upcoming test generations that we're looking for. So we're redoing early childhood education, the foundational knowledge and content. That's coming out along with a revised middle school social studies. And for the first time in many years, ETS is revamping its paraeducator assessment. So paraeducator will be the new name, replacing parapro. So those should all be coming out later in 2025. So a product that ETS brought back to market, and I say back to market, we did have a high stakes assessment around Proethica, which is ethics. It is aligned to the Model Code of Ethics for Educator Standards from NASDAQ, which is your National Association of Directors of Teacher Ed Certification. We did shelve that product many years ago. It wasn't getting a lot of traction. We decided that it would be more impactful or powerful for candidates and EPPs alike to bring it back as a professional development offering. So we are currently doing some pilots in a few states, Hawaii being one of them. What they're doing is they're having their candidates take Proethica as part of their ethics courses at all EPPs in the state. It's something that they wanted to pilot for 1 to 2 years to see if it really got the ethics message out and to see if it would help the EPPs because it is a 7.5 hour developed course, if you will. If anyone was interested in learning a little bit more about that, there is a QR code there on the screen, or you will have Lisa's contact information again at the end of this presentation, and she'd be happy to share any additional information around Proethica with either you or your institution as a whole. So at ETS, we really do feel like test prep makes a difference. We have partnered nationally with study.com. We do offer test prep, but we also have free Praxis core prep. We do greatly encourage the utilization of the study companions, as I stated through the presentation. We do offer a free interactive practice test when you register for one of our assessments. The candidate can go through and take that. What I will say to that is those are test questions, most likely retired test questions. However, they do get directly at the content of the assessment, and they are a very, very good measure for the candidate as they're going through that interactive practice test. When they get to the end, if they pass that practice test, it is pretty indicative that they will pass the new actual national assessment that they'll be taking. We do also offer a program called Praxis Learning Paths for the elementary series. That's a deep dive. I would go so far as to say professional development, along with some learning modules. And I would say test prep, yes, but it is deeper because they are actually getting a refresh and learning content as they go. We also offer Brainscapes, which are mobile flashcards for Praxis Prep. Those titles are coming on a little slower with that organization. And I believe Brainscape is, I think, $50 for one assessment pack, if you will, that would allow that candidate those quick flashcards. And study.com, as I mentioned, they are our official Praxis test prep partner. There are other organizations out there. By all means, they are good organizations. I don't think there's any bad test prep out there, but study.com is our official partner, which allows us to provide better supports for candidates. This can also all be selected while they're registering for their assessment. It's all in their portal for them to add to their test or come back later and do so. So that concludes our quick presentation today. At the bottom of this screen, there is Lisa's full name and her email for contact information. I would encourage folks to either take your phone and grab a quick shot of that or write that information down if you do not currently have that for Lisa. And again, I do apologize that she could not be here with you today, but she did have a conflict with that National Advisory Committee. So with that, I will conclude the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions from the group.
Should we be able to see those tabs, all test taker statistics and state agency statistics? Because as I'm looking at quick reports and generating some reports, I only seem to be able to activate the institutional statistics tab.
So it would depend upon what the state has allowed for EPPs in that respective state to see. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. I would recommend sending Lisa a direct email and have her take a look at your account and see if, we're human too, right? We may have made a mistake on account setup, or it may be that your state has not allowed that data to be shared. I do have a couple quick questions in the chat from Alexandra. How are the differences in the position based on CEC and other descriptors being considered for paras. So, Alexandra, are you talking about our new paraeducator assessment?
Yes, I was talking about the paraeducator assessment, because you mentioned that you guys were calling it paraprofessionals, and I was just wondering about the differences of the job and task and roles that they would have in based on that descriptor.
Great. So we should have, I'd say within the next 30 days or so, a document that we can share out in the field around how the new assessment is going to look. So I would definitely encourage you to send Lisa a direct email, and she'll be able to share that information specifically with you. She could probably also share it back to the TACTE group.
Okay. Okay, that would be great. Thank you. It's just since there's trying to make the differentiation in the role and responsibilities, I thought that will be good to know if we're just going to be, because that will be helpful also for people to know in relation to what the expectations will be for a paraprofessional rather than a paraeducator.
Right? And sometimes it's terminology. Sometimes we say paraprofessional, sometimes we say paraeducator, sometimes, we just call them paras. Um, don't read too much into maybe our lingo that we utilize at ETS, but I think it would be great to have Lisa send you the direct information.
Thank you.
Let's see. Is there any talk about bringing down the pricing of study.com? So Katie, we are currently in negotiations with study.com. We do have an annual renewal for the contract. And we are happy to look at that. I know we are looking at that. Um, I think right now it varies between a 10 and 20% discount if the candidate registers through our registration site or if they go directly to study.com. So there is a slight discount if they go through us, and I do believe they get a little more time as well for that specific assessment study prep versus going directly to study.com. And the cost of the Praxis Learning Pass. So PLP is around $100 per subset. So you're looking at about $400 for the Praxis Learning Path course. And then Taylor Reed. Tennessee does not hold a Parapro endorsement. So under current policy, this assessment is not part of any licensure area in Tennessee. So Taylor, good point. Many states do not license paraprofessionals or paraeducators, but they may still require an assessment. Obviously, in Tennessee, I'm not familiar with that. But Lisa, I'm sure, could lean into that conversation if she needed to.
Yeah, Jason, I apologize. I did not introduce myself. I'm our senior director of licensure, so I just wanted to throw that in. 'Cause I know we have some certification officers here, but yes, you are correct. And right now, the way that it is written into statute is that there does need to be a knowledge base for paras, and it's a bit of local choice. So that they could certainly utilize the para assessment to show that knowledge, and we definitely have some paraeducators, paraprofessionals who have chosen that route in the past. But I always just like to put a little plug in there for our certification officers just to say like, hey, especially because there are states that still do have para endorsements. And so a lot of times we'll get that question. I know they might get that question from another state. Does this translate? Does it, reciprocate? And, the answer to that is no, just because we don't have anything. But yeah.
And you're not alone, Taylor. A lot of states either are not doing it, like have never done it. Some have dropped it. Um, we all know that paraeducators don't make a lot of money, and going through a licensing process can sometimes be seen as a barrier. So we've heard those conversations around the country. So thank you so much for joining today, Taylor, and jumping in with that. I appreciate that. So it is 42 minutes after the hour. I think we're due to conclude at 45 after. So if there's no additional questions, I think I'll see if there's any housekeeping that we need to do. Sharon, anything from you?
No, except when you're when your video downloads, if you could send that to Rhonda Blevins and Chris Brown.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome. And if you can't get them, just send it to me, but you should be able to reach them. And listen, we appreciate you so much. And that was a very good presentation. The descriptions you used, the showing us and walking us through that process was very helpful. So we really do appreciate you, Jason. And please send Lisa our greetings as well. Yes.
I'll do that. And just a quick reminder, if any of you or your institutions would like a deeper dive into Data Manager, please reach out to Lisa. She is more than happy to schedule time with you. Perfect.
Jill, did you get that? Jill is licensure officer at Freed Hardeman. So yes. And Taylor, thank you so much for jumping in there today. We really appreciate you and all you do for the state. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. Pleasure seeing everyone.